The day Musa Adeyemi chose money over his family was the day the seed of his downfall was planted. But in the noisy heart of Ibadan, nobody noticed, not yet, because from the outside, Musa looked like a responsible man. Inside his house, his children were learning what hunger truly meant. The morning sun crawled slowly over the rusty zinc roofs of Okeado, one of the busiest areas in Ibadan. Traders were already shouting prices, buses were honking, and the smell of frying akara floated through the air. But inside the Adeyemi household, there was no smell of food, only silence, and the dry sound of a man counting money. 23,450,
23,115.
23,460. Musa licked his thumb carefully and flipped another note. Across the small sitting room, his wife Bisi stood watching him. Her wrapper was loose around her waist, not by fashion, but by force. She had lost weight, too much weight. Musa, she said softly, the children have not eaten since yesterday afternoon. He didn't look up. That was all. Just. Bisi swallowed hard. She was used to this. 7 years of marriage had taught her that Musa's heart beat in Naira and Kobo. Still, today she tried again. Tunde fainted in school yesterday, she whispered. This time Musa paused, but only briefly. Then he continued counting. Children of nowadays are too soft, he muttered. In my time, we trekked to school on empty stomach and we did not die. From the corner, 10-year-old Said watched quietly. Her big eyes moved from her father's money to her mother's tired face. She didn't speak. Children in that house had learned when to keep quiet. In Oke-Ado, Musa Adeyemi had a reputation, not for kindness, not for generosity, but for something else. Ah, that man, the pepper seller would say. He can squeeze water from stone. Musa was known as the most careful, or rather, the most stingy man on the entire street. He worked as an accounts clerk in a private warehouse. His salary was not huge, but it was steady, enough to feed a small family comfortably, enough to live well. But Musa had a different philosophy. Money saved his life secured, he always said. What he never said was the second part, the part he lived by, even if your family suffers. That evening rain clouds gathered over Ibadan that evening, heavy and threatening. Inside the kitchen, Bisi opened the food cupboard again. Empty. Only one small mudu of gari remained. She closed her eyes. How did it get this bad? Behind her, little Kunle, only 6 years old, tugged her wrapper. Mommy, my stomach is making noise again. Her heart cracked. She quickly forced a smile. Come, my son, we will drink gari. From the sitting room came Musa's sharp voice. Don't finish that gari. It must last till weekend. Busy. Froze. Kunle's hopeful face slowly fell, and something dangerous flickered in Busy's eyes for the first time. That night the children slept early, not because they were tired, because hunger weakens the body. Busy lay awake on the thin mattress beside Musa. He was snoring peacefully, while her stomach twisted in pain. She turned and looked at him in the dim light. God, she whispered silently, how long will we suffer like this? Outside, thunder rolled across Ibadan. Inside the house, the first crack in Musa's perfect control had begun, though he didn't know it yet. Because somewhere deep in that house, something was slowly changing. Something that would soon teach Musa Adeyemi a lesson he would never forget. If you're enjoying the story so far, tell me, where are you watching from? By the third week of the month, the Adeyemi house had developed a strange routine. Morning came, no breakfast, afternoon passed, no proper lunch, night fell, and hunger tucked the children into bed. But in Ibadan, hunger has a voice, and slowly it was beginning to speak. The rooster in the compound crowed long before sunrise, but Busy had not slept. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the small tin where she secretly kept coins. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Empty, completely empty. Her chest tightened. 7 years of marriage. And she, a grown woman, could not buy bread for her children without begging her own husband. Behind her, Musa turned on the mattress and stretched lazily. Busy, he mumbled, half asleep. Don't forget to switch off the kitchen light. Electricity bill is rising. Busy slowly closed the tin. Something inside her chest hardened. Later that morning, Tunde dragged his feet along the dusty road to school. His uniform hung loosely on his thin frame. Beside him, Saide walked quietly, her school bag almost bigger than her back. Mommy said we should manage today, Tunde muttered weakly. Said didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were fixed on the roadside food vendors. Steaming rice, fried plantain, moi moi wrapped in leaves. Her stomach growled loudly. Two boys ahead turned and laughed. See them, hunger children. Tunde's fist clenched, but he said nothing, because what could he say? They were not lying. Meanwhile, Musa was planning. At the warehouse office, Musa sat proudly behind his desk, calculator in hand. His colleague, Mr. Balogun, leaned over. Musa, there is a cooperative contribution for staff welfare. Only 5,000 naira. Musa's head snapped up. 5,000? He repeated sharply. Balogun chuckled. It is for emergencies. When someone is sick or I don't believe in waste. Musa cut in coldly. Balogun raised an eyebrow. But your children? My family is fine, Musa said quickly, almost defensively. But for the first time, a tiny flicker of doubt crossed his face. It vanished quickly. Musa returned to his calculator. Numbers were safer than reality. The day everything almost broke that afternoon, the sun in Ibadan was merciless, hot, heavy, unforgiving. Inside Primary 5 classroom, Tunde's vision began to blur. The teacher's voice sounded far away. Open your mathematics textbook. The chalk fell from the teacher's hand because Tunde had just collapsed. Musa was halfway through his lunch of office biscuits, carefully rationed, of course, when his phone rang. He frowned at the unknown number. Hello? Sir, please, are you Tunde Adeyemi's father? His stomach tightened. Yes, what happened? Your son fainted in school. We think it is due to weakness. Please come. For the first time in many years, Musa's calculator slipped from his hand. By the time Musa arrived, Tunde was sitting, weakly on a bench, sipping water slowly. He looked smaller than Musa remembered, too small. The headmistress folded her arms. Mr. Adeyemi, she said carefully, children cannot learn on empty stomach. Musa forced a stiff smile. He is just stubborn with food. The headmistress held his gaze, long, uncomfortable. Sir, she said quietly, we are not blind. Something hot crawled up Musa's neck. Embarrassment, anger. He couldn't tell, but instead of softening, his pride hardened. Back home, the atmosphere was heavy. The children sat quietly, too quietly. Busy served the usual, watery gari. Musa cleared his throat. We must reduce expenses further, he announced. Silence, thick silence. Then something shocking happened. Busy laughed, not loudly, not wildly, but the sound froze everyone in the room, because in 7 years, Bisi Adeyemi had never laughed at her husband before. Musa's eyes narrowed slowly. Bisi, he said dangerously, what is funny? She looked up, and for the first time there was no fear in her eyes, only something new, something rising, something that would soon shake the entire Adeyemi household. If this story is pulling you in, drop your city in the comments. I'd love to see where you're following from. Musa Adeyemi did not sleep well that night. At first, he told himself it was the heat. Ibadan nights could be stubborn. Then he blamed the mosquitoes. But deep down, he knew the truth. It was Bisi's laughter. That quiet, strange laughter that had escaped her lips at the dinner table kept echoing in his ears like a stubborn drumbeat. In 7 years of marriage, Bisi had always been soft, careful, obedient. But last night, something had shifted, and Musa hated things he could not control. The next morning came with thick humidity hanging over Oke Ado like a heavy blanket. Inside the Adeyemi house, nobody spoke, not during prayers, not while the children dressed for school, not even when Musa adjusted his worn briefcase and prepared to leave. He finally cleared his throat. BC, she looked up from tying Kunle's shoelace. Yes? The calmness in her voice irritated him. What happened yesterday will not repeat itself, Musa said firmly. There must be order in this house. BC held his gaze for a few seconds, not challenging, not submissive, just steady. As you wish, she said quietly, but something in her tone made Musa's chest tighten. In compounds like theirs, nothing stayed hidden for long. By mid-morning, Mama Iabo, the compound's unofficial news broadcaster, was already whispering to another tenant by the well. I heard the boy fainted in school. Haha, that Musa man too like money too much. They say the wife is even looking thinner these days. Musa, returning briefly to pick a forgotten file, heard the last part. His jaw tightened. He hated gossip, but more than that, he hated being exposed. Meanwhile, something was growing in BC. That afternoon, BC sat alone in the small kitchen. The empty cupboard stared back at her again. But today, instead of tears, her eyes were calculating, careful, quiet. She picked up the last mudu of Gary and stared at it for a long time. 7 years. 7 years of managing. 7 years of explaining hunger to children who did not deserve it. Her fingers slowly tightened around the bowl. Musa Adeyemi, she whispered softly. Something must change. And for the first time in this marriage, BC began to think. That evening, Tunde returned from school slower than usual. He dropped his bag gently and sat on the floor without his usual greeting. Musa noticed. What is it again? He asked sharply. Tunde hesitated, then quietly said, Nothing, sir. But children's silence often screams, the loudest. Sad, who had been watching from the doorway, finally spoke in a small voice. Daddy, our teacher said we should bring contribution for excursion. The room froze. Musa's head turned slowly. How much? 2,000 naira each. The explosion was immediate. Excursion? Musa thundered. Are you in school to be playing up and down? Sade flinched. Tunde lowered his head. BC stepped forward carefully. Musa, it is part of their learning. Enough, he snapped. The children went completely still. Then Musa delivered the sentence that would quietly plant the final seed of rebellion in that house. No child of mine will waste money on unnecessary movement. Night conversations. Whispered but dangerous. Long after Musa fell asleep, the small room shared by the children remained awake. The kerosene lamp flickered weakly. Tunde stared at the ceiling. Seide whispered, Brother, are we really poor? The Tia question hung heavily in the air. Tunde swallowed. He didn't know how to answer because the truth was confusing. Their father worked, money existed, but food, comfort, small joys, those things felt forbidden. I don't know, he finally said. From the corner, little Kunle spoke sleepily. I just want meat in my food. Silence fell again. But in that silence, something was forming. Slow, patient, dangerous. What nobody in the house knew was that Musa had a private ritual. Every night after everyone slept, he would quietly unlock his old metal box hidden under the bed. Tonight was no different. He brought it out carefully, unlocked it, and smiled. Bundles of neatly arranged naira notes stared back at him. Savings, security, control. He ran his fingers lovingly over the money. One day, he whispered proudly, this family will thank me. But outside the bedroom door, BC stood in the darkness, watching, listening, and, for the first time in 7 years, her eyes were not filled with patience, they were filled with a plan. If this story is getting more intense for you, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of your country in the comments. If Musa Adeyemi had looked closely at his household that week, he would have noticed it. Not noise, not rebellion, something more dangerous. Calm. Because in many homes across Ibadan, the moment a quiet woman stops complaining, something is already in motion. But Musa was too busy counting tomorrow's security to notice today slipping from his hands. The next morning broke with a cool breeze, rare for that time of year. BC woke before everyone, as usual. But today she did not go straight to the empty food cupboard. Instead, she sat on the wooden stool in the small kitchen and stared at the wall clock. Tick, tick, tick. Her mind was working. 7 years of swallowing pain had sharpened something inside her. Something Musa had never bothered to see. Footsteps shuffled behind her. It was Said. Mommy, are we eating this morning? The question was soft, careful, almost fearful. Busy turned slowly and pulled her daughter close. Soon, she said gently, but inside her chest the words carried a different meaning. Very soon. That same morning, Musa walked into the warehouse office with his usual stiff confidence, but the air around him had changed. Mr. Balogun leaned back in his chair as Musa passed. Musa, he called casually, how is your boy now? Musa paused. He is fine. Balogun studied him for a moment. You know, sometimes saving too hard can cost more later. Musa's shoulders stiffened immediately. I know how to run my home, he replied curtly. Balogun raised both hands in surrender. As you wish. But as Musa walked to his desk, for the first time, the words followed him. By noon, the compound was buzzing with its usual activity, children playing, women cooking, radios blasting. But BC moved quietly, carefully. She wrapped her faded scarf around her head and stepped outside. Mama Iyabo, always alert, spotted her immediately. Ah, 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 ah. BC, where you dey go this hot afternoon? BC forced a polite smile. Just a small errand, ma. Mama Iyabo's eyes narrowed slightly. Something about BC's walk today was different, straighter, more certain. But before she could probe further, BC had already passed through the compound gate. The small provision shop sat at the corner of the street, the same one BC had passed hundreds of times without stopping. Today she entered. The shop owner, a plump woman with sharp eyes, looked up. Yes, my sister. BC hesitated. This moment felt heavier than it should. Then quietly she said, Ma'am, do you need help in the evenings? I can assist with cleaning or arranging goods. The woman blinked. Surprised? You want to work? BC nodded slowly. Yes. There was a long pause. Then the woman leaned forward. Does your husband know? BC's fingers tightened slightly around her wrapper. Not yet. The shop owner studied her face carefully. Years of running a neighborhood shop had taught her to read women's eyes, and what she saw in BC's eyes today was not rebellion, it was survival. Finally, she nodded. Come by 6 p.m. We will try. BC exhaled slowly. The first stone had been moved. When Musa returned home that evening, everything looked normal, too normal. The children greeted him politely. BC served the usual light meal without complaint. Even the house felt unusually peaceful. Musa relaxed. Good. Order was returning, but sharp men often miss the quietest storms. At exactly 6 p.m., as agreed, BC stepped quietly out of the compound. Mommy, where are you going? Kunle whispered. To help. Someone, she replied gently. Tunde's eyes narrowed slightly. Something in his mother's tone made his chest tighten with curiosity, but he said nothing. Children in that house had learned patience. Back at the shop owner wasted no time. Arrange those cartons, sweep the back, then help me count the biscuit packs. Busy walked steadily, quietly, but inside her chest something powerful was building. For the first time in years, she was doing something for her children. By the time she finished, 2 hours later, the woman handed her a small folded note. 500 naira for today. Bisi stared at the money like it was gold. Her fingers trembled slightly as she took it. 500. To some people in Ibadan it was small. To Bisi Adeyemi, it was the first breath of change. Meanwhile, Musa notices something. Back at home, Musa frowned slightly. Something was off. The house was too calm, too cooperative. Even the children looked hopeful. His instincts stirred uneasily, but pride quickly covered the feeling. Everything was under control, or so he believed. When BC returned quietly that night, Musa was already asleep. She stood beside the bed and watched him for a long moment. Then slowly, she hid the 500 naira inside an old sewing kit. Her first secret, her first step, and somewhere deep in the future. The lesson waiting for Musa Adeyemi took one step closer. If this story is keeping you glued, tap subscribe and tell me your city in the comments. I love seeing where my viewers are following from. Musa Adeyemi believed two things in life: money never betrayed, and control was everything. He was about to discover how wrong he was. At first, Musa could not explain the changes in his house. The children looked brighter, not fat, no, but no longer dull with constant hunger. Their voices carried small energy again. Even BC moved differently, calm, steady, almost peaceful. It disturbed him. One evening, he finally asked, BC, where are you getting extra food from? BC did not panic. She simply replied, I am managing, Musa. That word again, managing, it pricked his pride. 2 nights later, Musa woke to drink water. As he returned to the bedroom, he noticed something strange. The sewing kit on the table was slightly open. Musa frowned. He was not a careless man. Curiosity was part of his nature. Slowly, he opened it and froze. Neatly folded inside were small notes of money, not his, not from his metal box. His chest tightened. The next evening, he followed her, quietly, carefully, all the way to the provision shop at the street corner. And there, Musa Adeyemi saw his wife, working, sweeping, arranging goods, smiling tiredly for money. He did not wait. He stormed into the shop. BC, the entire shop fell silent. BC turned slowly. For a moment, fear flashed in her eyes. Then it disappeared. What is the meaning of this? Musa demanded, voice shaking with anger and wounded pride. BC wiped her hands calmly on her wrapper. The meaning is simple, she said quietly. Our children were starving. The words landed like a slap. Musa opened his mouth, but nothing came out, because for the first time, someone had said the truth to his face without fear. The shop owner, who had been watching quietly, spoke gently. Brother, money is good, but children cannot eat savings. The sentence pierced deeper than any insult. Musa's shoulders slowly dropped. Images flooded his mind. Tunde collapsing, Kunle's weak voice, Said staring at roadside food, and BC, working in secret just to feed his own children. His throat tightened painfully. For the first time in many years, Musa Adeyemi felt ashamed. Musa began releasing money for proper food. The children returned to school stronger. The house grew warmer, not from wealth, but from balance. One evening, as the family ate a proper meal together, Musa cleared his throat. I was wrong, he said quietly. The room went still. BC simply nodded, because sometimes the greatest victory is not shouting, it is being seen. In many homes across Ibadan, people still save every kobo, and saving is wise. But Musa Adeyemi learned the hard way. Money kept too tightly can cost you the very people you are trying to secure a future for. Because in the end, family is not meant to survive your savings. They are meant to live with you. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from? Your support keeps these powerful stories coming.